Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to this Creating the Future podcast. So excited that you're joining in. Today is going to be especially wild in the fact that we are going to talk about politics. And let me warn you in advance, you're probably going to be tempted to stop it at some point if I say something you disagree with, or one of the people on our panel says something that you disagree with. I just want to encourage you to have the wisdom and the maturity to actually watch all the way through so that you can hear the fullness of our perspectives that we're sharing with you today. And I am on this panel today. You know me, Dr. Brent Simpson. I'm with Pastor Keren Emmanuel, our Brandon location pastor, and Pastor Tina Blount, our community pastor here at Arise. And I would love to call this podcast, I think we should call it Two Independents and a Woman Voter Walk into a Bar, right? a white man, a black man, and a woman walk into a bar, whatever you want to call it. And so I'm actually an independent voter. I'm not Republican or Democrat. Pastor Keren, you're independent as well?
Yes, sir.
Yep. So we got a black independent voter, a white independent, and then Pastor Tina?
I'm a Republican.
Pastor Tina is a female Republican voter. And what we want to do over the next few moments is look through. I asked ChatGPT, I said, give me the 10 most important issues in the 2024 election of what people are talking about. And we just want to walk through those 10 things and talk about, from our perspective, which party best represents our views. And honestly, at the end, who we're going to be voting for because of this. Now, I want to encourage you as you process this vote and this election this year, that you don't get all caught up in personalities. This is always the case, and somebody's going to say, well, that's because you like Trump and he's got a bad personality. No, that's not what it is. It's always the case because people turn political elections into popularity contests. And you can usually tell where they're going based on where they have been. And this election is actually one of the ones that's the most like this, because both of these people, you have one who's a vice president and you can really tell their policies and where they've been. And you have another one who has been a president, so you can tell their policies and where they've been. And so really this is a year where you can really look at policies over and platforms over personalities. And so I just think that's very important. And some people are like, well, we don't know how they're going to act. Well, in this year, you really kind of do know how they're going to act when they become president. So with that being said, do you guys want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll say it's important to understand that neither person fully exemplifies what it means or holds a Christian value. So
right.
Going based on character, I know that plays a part for some people, but it cannot be the final say, because both of these individuals, character-wise, I don't think we would say they meet the full standard
right.
of what the Bible calls to be a Christian leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you also have to look at what the major issues are to you. Mm-hmm. And the reality is you're not going to agree with anybody 100%. You're not going to like everybody 100%. So what are the major issues? What are the things that are most important? And make your decisions based upon that.
Yeah. Amen. I think we definitely have to watch these issues. We got to see what's going on. So let's talk about some of these issues. We got 10 of them on this list. I'm going to add 2 more right off the bat that I think should be important to us as Christians. The 2 of them really touch together a lot. And the first one that I'm throwing in here is moral issues. When it comes to moral issues in our country, which party best demonstrates Christian values, or what I care about the most, which is Christian values? I'm an ambassador for Christ. I don't get an opinion. I want to share God's opinion. And when it comes to moral issues, which would be LGBTQ issues and things like that, I think it's without a doubt far leaning to the right in the Republican Party compared to the Democratic Party, where they really want to run with lascivious lifestyles and things. And we love all people, but they want to run with rights for things that's I don't think should be the case. And as a Christian voter, I think morality issues make a big difference. And oftentimes people will say you can't legislate morality. And I hate when people say that, because that's the dumbest thing in the world. And it's usually somebody repeating something they've heard. Literally every law that's on the books is legislating morality. Right. All laws legislate morality. Of course we legislate morality. And this is one of those moments where we are endorsing moralities that are anti-biblical and ultimately hurtful to human beings and societies at large. You guys want to speak to moral issues?
Yeah, I think that's, to your point, exactly what the case is. So you have one side that will tend to kind of let me say it clearly, all about how you feel. Right. And I get that's important. Like you mentioned, we love people. We're all about people. But sometimes we have to separate the feeling from what is actual biblical morality. And so you have some of these issues that will pull on some certain certain emotional strings. But then at the same time, when you're looking at in relation to God and Scripture and living a Christian life, it's like, well, one side seems to lean more towards, hey, this is where we stand, and we ought to be we ought to view things in a more moralistic view.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reality is that anytime our personal values disagree with biblical values, we're the ones that have to make an adjustment.
Right.
And when you look at the Democratic Party and you look at the Republican Party is by far more conservative. They are going to more often align with biblical values. And I think that's one of the reasons that I am a Republican, is because not because I don't vote for Democrats, because I will if I think they're the right candidate. But more often than not, I'm going to lean Republican because it aligns with biblical values.
I think it's important to say, PB, it's important to note that we're not saying that all Democrats are immoral.
No.
Right.
Of course
And
not.
so we're not saying that only Republicans are moral. But when it comes to both parties, historically speaking, it tends to show that one side tends to be a little more moralistic in terms of...
In recent history, yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Just wanted to make sure those...
I think the other one that I'm adding into this list of 10 and touches this one, in my opinion, a lot is freedom issues.
Right.
Freedom of speech, because a lot of the cancel culture and all that comes from the LGBTQ issues and what's allowed in our society and what's not. And that's another one that, to me, as a Christian voter, makes a huge difference, because I pastor a church where we need to be able to stand up and preach the gospel unashamedly without having to worry about the government shutting us down, which happens in Canada and some other countries when they talk about LGBTQ issues. And it really may be those things that society may not agree, but you have to have a society that can disagree agreeably and still share your opinions and thoughts. And you can't shut people down just because they disagree. And that's another one where I feel like it's strongly on the Republican side, because the Republicans are far more open to free speech, although they're not perfectly open to it either. It's just different. But when it comes to these type of issues, they're far more open to it. And the Democratic side is the one that wants to cancel and shut everything down when you disagree with them. What would y'all say to that one?
Well, you certainly saw an example of that in the last election that happened, and even throughout Trump's presidency. I mean, he was literally shut down on social media because another party felt like his words were dangerous. Mm-hmm. Well, our words are dangerous. Mm-hmm. Our words can lift up and they can tear down. And whether you agree with his rhetoric or not his rhetoric, the Republican Party is more likely to give a broader berth for you to have free speech, even if we don't agree with it.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I don't have much to add to that, but to say that it's important that we understand that it's all right to not agree with me. And I think especially when it comes to certain high-level political issues, when it comes to race or certain things like that, it gets weird because people feel like, oh, you shouldn't be able to say that, but we're in America. Whether you like it or not, I have the right to say it. And I think I want to be able to fight for that right, opposed to, hey, let's kind of censor what we're saying to one another. I mean, that's not the kind of world I want to live in with my kids.
Yeah. America, we have a right to say stupid things, right? We have a right to say offensive things.
Fortunately, yes.
And hopefully it should self-correct itself, but we have to have the right to disagree. And and even with the character things, like with the first Trump presidency where they're shutting him down on Twitter and things like that, people have to have the right to say things, even if they're dangerous things. Now, that's part of the issues that we would have with Trump, is that there's character issues. And as soon as you say character issues, somebody always blurts out, well, we're not voting for a pastor, we're voting for a president. And I'm like, yeah, but presidents still need to have character, right? And I think you end up with character issues on both sides of these. We don't want to deify or crucify our leaders. And so some people will turn them into Jesus and other people want to turn them into the devil on either side. And I think that's dangerous. Okay, the first issue here, and I want to go through these kind of quickly. The first one is the economy. The economy. So are we better off, worse off with a Republican president, Democratic president when it comes to the economy? Pastor Tina, speak to that.
Yeah, so I mean, let's just look at where we've been for the last 4 years versus where we were 4 years before that. We're paying $3.25 a gallon for gas here in the area. At one point, eggs went up to $8. I saw a post the other day that said 4 years ago, the same items that cost $70 at Walmart are costing $170. And so I think if you just look at the facts, we were better off 4 years ago than we are sitting today. To me, that is a Republican vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Republicans tend to be equal opportunity, but not equal outcome. And so because of that, we have, the Democratic Party typically wanting to give equal outcome to everyone, and that affects everything. When you think of education, when you think of, other things where tax will be increased and affect the everyday middle class living. I think it gets icky, and I would lean Republican in terms of, hey, we all have the same opportunity, but the outcome may not be the same.
Right.
It may not be. You may do something smarter than I do, and then because of that, outcome is different.
Yeah, if the outcome's the same, that would be socialism, and that's not what we are in America. I would just throw in here, when we talk about the economy, sometimes people are like, well, we need higher minimum wage, and I'm not inherently opposed to that. But when you raise minimum wage in some of these lower income jobs, when you raise that, what you do is you actually raise all of inflation. And so it doesn't actually help. So yeah, you make $1 more an hour, but now bread costs more, and chicken costs more, and everything else costs more too. And so I think it's the Democratic economic policies that seem to be better for us at the low end and the normal American. And I don't think you have to look real hard for that. You just look at the track record of those policies. It's not about a person, it's about the policies of the person. So, all right, the second one here is healthcare. This is a complicated one because I'm going to argue that neither side has an answer to our healthcare crisis, and it is an absolute mess. And I'm probably going to argue this several times within this little podcast that we're doing. But our healthcare system is an absolute mess. I probably lean a little bit Democrat in the fact that we've got to get healthcare to people. I also don't know that it's a fundamental right of humanity that you have healthcare either. I don't know if it's quite that simple. But I also look at things from a Republican side and say you can't just give away free healthcare because somebody's got to pay those doctor bills, which becomes the taxpayer, which becomes everybody else paying for everyone else. And so it's a very complicated mess when it comes to healthcare. And I don't know that there is an answer to it. I just think you're weeding through it at this point, and people act like they have answers when they don't actually have them. So I don't know that I lean Republican or Democrat when it comes to healthcare. What do y'all
Yeah,
lean?
so from my understanding, Republicans, there are certain policies that are trying to fight to get more individual insurance companies to bid against each other instead of doing universal health care. So if we have all these companies bidding for each other, what does that do? It makes insurance cheaper. Therefore, more people are able to afford it. And so I think, I tend to lean towards the idea, okay, let's try to make insurance cheaper for everyone overall, so that there is an equal opportunity for us to have some, rather than, giving everyone, again, I understand that concept, but to whose cost and benefit, to my family, to some of the other families who can't even afford insurance for a small, a medium class income holding wage for a family.
Yeah. I tend to lean more Republican on this one because I remember, let's go back 7-8 years ago, something of that nature. I think it even goes back prior to that. It goes back to the Obama administration. I had private health care, and then all of a sudden I had to have Obamacare. Let me take that back. I did not have insurance. Obamacare required that you have insurance, and if you didn't have insurance, then you got taxed for not getting it. But the thing is, I couldn't afford Obamacare. I simply couldn't afford it. So the Democratic philosophy, as I understand it, is they want you to have more governmental, organized plans, where the Republican Party says, no, you don't have to have that. I am going to work to negotiate among industries. And oh, by the way, if you can't afford it, you're not going to get taxed for it. And for the person out there who thinks, I can't afford it, but I can't afford your taxes either, that sways my vote to the Republican side on this, not on the Democratic.
Yeah. Healthcare is always a hot topic issue, and it's just a mess all the way around. I think we can all agree on that. The next one is a very similar: immigration. Immigration, in my opinion, is a broken system all the way around. And the stereotypes are that the Republicans want to build a wall and don't let anybody in. The Democrats want to open the wall and let everybody in. Neither one of those are going to be healthy and work. We got to build a policy that allows people to come in legally and correctly and come in and out of our country. I still believe that we need immigration. We need people coming into our country. That's a beautiful, healthy thing of our country, but it just needs to be done the right way. Sometimes Republican policies seem like maybe they are a little bit too stringent on that and becomes difficult. And we have lots of lots of immigrants in our church and people from other countries who have to deal with this. And it is very difficult to get through the paperwork and all of what all that's going on. My son right now is marrying an immigrant, right? And so I'm experiencing this firsthand in our family. At the other side, you can't just open the borders and let people just come in freely either. That's a disaster. And so this is another one that, in my perspective, is just a mess. And the talking heads on the political parties both act like they have solutions, and they probably don't. I would probably lean a little bit more Republican on this, but I don't know that I lean heavily either way. But it needs to be resolved by either party that's in office.
Yeah, I would lean more Republican, because the idea of blocking everyone and not allowing people to come to our country it doesn't make sense.
Right.
We are the United States. My parents were immigrants who came here legally and went through the process. And so I think we need to work harder on how to speed line that process and allowing people to come in, but not just letting people come in droves to where they're taking, resources from American citizens. Again, I want more people to come into our country, but how do we streamline that process or create a better process to where it's not taking 3, 4, 5, 6 years and a whole bunch of your hard-earned money just to get some of the legal paperwork.
Yeah, this is tough. This is just a tough one, and I agree with you. I don't think either party has a really good answer for it. I don't think building a wall around the United States of America is the right path. Neither do I think you can let everybody in and give them every American resource the moment they walk in the door, including jobs that hard-working Americans should have at least a fair opportunity at. I don't know that anybody has an answer on this one.
Yeah. And I want to be careful, because you never want to have the political side that demonizes and then uses that.
Sure.
Every immigrant is not, some kind of gangster who's going to kill people, which is the way sometimes it gets portrayed. Right. It's just a mess there. The next one on this list is what it titled, according to ChatGPT, abortion rights. I would call this right to life myself, but I think this is one that is very clearly, as Christians, the Bible is clear from start to finish that life matters from the cradle to the grave, from inception all the way till death. Life is valuable. We should value life. And there is clearly one political party who stands on the side of life and clearly one who doesn't. Now, I would say the one standing on the side of life is not nearly as strongly on that side as they used to be, but there's clearly a delineation in this one. I would also say, for anybody who hears this, I hate when people say that men don't have a right to speak on this subject. Certainly, I can't speak of it the same way Pastor Tina could or a woman could, but to say I don't have a right to speak on it is like saying I don't have a right to speak on murder because I was never murdered. Right. Or on murder because I never murdered anybody. That's ridiculous. This is a moral issue that is biblical, and absolutely men and all of us have a right to speak on it. It will be a little different, though. So what would you guys say? I'd be heavily Republican. What would y'all say?
Yeah, that's, for me, an easy Republican choice. I am definitely pro-life and understanding that God created us, whether you believe, whatever you believe. Yes, pro-life, 100%. There's so much to say to that here's what I do want to say, Pastor. I do want to say this. There are people who have been through some difficult moments when it comes to abuse and all that stuff, and that is in consideration. But thank God there are options. Thank God there is help, there is support. And I do think that there can be a way out. And I know that sounds difficult. I know there are situations that are tied to that, but there can be a way out. And so I would say always we choose life because God chose us.
Yeah, certainly this is a hot topic in the nation. It is a huge topic among women, right? And there is this voice out there that says that if you take away my reproductive rights, that's not okay. But if you're a Christian, this is a non-negotiable. Our lives were bought at a price. Our bodies are not our own. Therefore, even if something absolutely heinous happened to me or happened to my daughter, we would still look to God's word to say, what does he say on this topic? And so while I agree with you that the Republican Party does not have as strong of a voice on this as they once had, they by far have the stronger voice. Right. And if you're a believer, you have to lean Republican on this one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Number 5 on their list was crime and public safety. Crime and public safety. I would look at this. To me, this is sort of easy. If you just look at Democratic-run cities and states compared to Republican-run cities and states, economics is going to show you the same thing. A lot of times it's the California Democratic Party that's completely bankrupt, and these Democratic states are oftentimes struggling. It's the cities like Chicago that have been Democratic-run for a long time, where safety is such an issue and crime is such an issue. To me, I'd be strongly on the Republican side, which takes a harder stance on crime. At the same time, you got to be careful because you want to be loving and give people, hope and help out of it. But all you got to do is just look at the cities across America and whether they're Republican or Democrat run to see how crime goes. What would y'all say?
So for me on this one, it comes down to dollars, because what the Republicans have said that they want to do is they want to fund police departments so that police departments have the ability to have mental health counselors, to have individuals to handle some of the issues that they're facing on the streets. The Democratic side has said that they want to reform. Well, what that means is that they want to take their money away. And so while I do believe there needs to be reform, and while I do believe there needs to be training, it takes money, honey, and bread, Fred. And so I would lean Republican for that reason.
Yeah, and I don't have much to add, but to saying that where our money goes matters. And so it's important. Prison reform is important. I think there needs to be a plan, a second chance plan for those who have made a choice that was at a detriment to their life. But then again, there are so many different things where our tax dollars are going that I think they can be better spent on securing our police departments and first responders and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I would lean a little Republican here.
Yeah. All right, number 6 on the list I think is very easy, Supreme Court appointments. We've already talked about morality. We've already talked about abortion. Supreme Court is what ends up making a lot of those laws. Whether they're lawful or not is a different subject. I would lean heavily Republican because of the morality issues and the abortion issues. What would you all say?
Yes, and yes.
100%.
Okay. The number 7 issue here is national security and terrorism. I don't know that I have a great answer for that, but I would say that the Republican Party generally is about building up the military and protection, whereas the Democratic Party maybe wants to tear it down a little bit more. Even within nationalism and the way we look at America, it tends to be that the Republican Party is more proud to be an American, and the Democratic Party is almost ashamed sometime of being an American, which probably says a lot. But so I would lean Republican with national security and terrorism as well.
Yeah, I would say the same. We have to protect our people and our country, and a strong military might is one of those avenues. And you look throughout, especially the Old Testament, we promoted strong military. And so I want to be a country that's proud of our military. I have people in our family who have served our country and given their life so that I can have the right to do so and to do this right here.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a time that America was considered the superpower.
Yeah.
I don't know that we are considered the superpower. We're certainly a superpower, but we're not the ultimate superpower, and yet we're the greatest country on planet Earth. Obviously, here's my USA t-shirt. But I think one of the ways we stay that superpower is by investing in our armed forces. It's by staying on the cutting edge. It's by not bowing down and standing up and making other people stand up at the same time, leading the United Nations. So I lean heavily Republican on this.
Amen. All right, number 8, climate change is the next issue that comes up. This is another one, and I know I've said this repeatedly, but I think this is a jumbled mess that nobody has an answer for. The Democratic Party tends to be trying to lead the way in electric vehicles and things like that, which I'm not even sure they're the answer. Our power grids can't even handle it if we all have electric vehicles. And then you have the giant dumps of the batteries that come from that and such. But the Democratic seems to be like, we lead the way and we have to change. The Republican says we change as the world changes. I just got back from India and Nepal, and I can promise you this, they are not thinking about climate change there, where you got 1 million cars and the smog is so bad. And America's one small pebble in this. So I don't know that I have a lean right or left on this one. I think it's another thing that's a giant challenge for the world, and it's very hard to lead the world in a direction that the world's just not going. And like Pastor Tina just said, I do think we were a world leader. I'm not sure we're the same world leader we once were. And I would even to go a step further, as one who's traveled around the world, I oftentimes I think we're a little bit of a laughing stock, partially because the LGBTQ stuff, which we celebrate here, and they look at us in other countries like we're complete idiots for the stuff that we're doing. You know, we got women swimmers or men who are swimming on women's swimming team, beating them in swimming and stuff like that. And the world doesn't comprehend that, whereas at least some Americans do. I don't know that we have that moral authority to be able to speak into climate change like we once maybe did. So I'm just kind of in the middle on this one.
Yeah, this is where I would encourage myself and those who are hearing to do further education. I think this is a subject that sometimes gets overlooked because it's not one of the big policies that, you know, tend to get the headlines. But this is one where myself and I would challenge other people to continue to do more research to understand how this would relate, if it does, to what Scripture teaches us, and so on and so forth. So I am with you. I'm not sure. So I'll pass it off to you.
Yeah, this is a lot like the border. I don't think either party has an answer on this. Trump has clearly said he's not even sure climate change exists. Scientists will tell you that the water in the Gulf of Mexico, which we all just got slammed by with Hurricane Milton, is up 17 degrees. And it's, so something's going on, something's heating it up in there. Then you've got the Democratic side of this who wants to put tons and tons of money towards this. It's messy. Mm-hmm. It's really messy. I'm like, is there an independent out there with an answer on this? Because at the moment, I'm not sure that either party actually does.
All right, now we go to number 9 on ChatGPT's list, racial and ethnic equality. I think this is such an important issue. At the same time, I also think this is ultimately a church issue and a family issue, not just a Democrat-Republican issue. And sometimes the government does have to get involved in these things. There's certainly a time that's ripe for that. However, the solution to this is not in the government. The solution to this is in our homes, and it's in our churches. It's not the White House, it's our house, right? However, with that being said, when I look at Republican or Democrat side, I feel like the Democrats do a really good job of paying lip service to people of color, oftentimes bringing them along without ever having any teeth to it and bringing change. And they just kind of pull people along for a long time without ever making any difference. I don't know that the Republicans do a good job of listening to people of color, but the Republicans do a better job of making an even playing field, which you mentioned earlier, Pastor Keren, where we all have equal opportunity, not equal outcome, but equal opportunity. The Republicans do a little better job of that, in my opinion, and traditionally always have. So that's kind of my opinion. I'm kind of in the middle of this, but I would lean Republican with racial and ethnic inequality, which might sound weird to some people.
Yeah. For me, it's been a back and forth throughout my adult life of bouncing between parties in terms of who is helping the Black community per se, people who are of color, who we know the history of America and whatnot. We won't get into that, but so for me, it's been more or less about what party is not only doing lip service, but providing an opportunity for everyone, whether what color, gender, whatnot, for you to have an opportunity. So in other words, I want to be able to have the same opportunity as Pastor Brent and as Pastor Tina to go to the same school, to go to the same church, to do all those things that every American should have the right to do. And so it's been back and forth for me. But now, as I'm growing in my faith, I lean Republican. There are a lot of things that the Republican Party is doing to provide equal opportunity. So that certain people would talk about low-income areas that don't have food and whatnot. Well, food stamps and all those things are driven by the Republican Party. Give opportunity. All right, you don't have. Yeah. Here's some resources for you to do that. Everyone has the same opportunity. We're not just giving away so on and so forth. So all that to say, I am leaning. I will vote Republican on this one, and it's not a perfect world. There's a lot of things I could say that way.
Well, I think isn't there, like in our church we say this a lot. We want to offer a hand up, not a hand out. And sometimes the Democratic policies are more about a handout, which ultimately just puts somebody in the same position forever. They get reliant on it sometimes. And a hand up is bringing people out of poverty and helping with things. So, Pastor Tina?
Yeah. I don't know I have a whole lot more to add to this other than I think there's a third component that's missing in this. So it's not only racial and ethnic, but it's also gender equality. And so it's, you want the same rights that I do and Pastor Brent does, but I want the same rights that you have and you have as a woman. And so when I take a look at what the Republican Party has done to support women's rights, Black lives, brown lives, immigrant lives, I lean more Republican than I do Democratic on this. I don't think anybody has it figured out. This is climate change. This is border control. But if you look at decisions made, I think in this election, here's where we have to be careful. You're going to have a white man and a black woman, but you're not just voting for a white man and a black woman. You're voting for a party, and you're voting for a cabinet that is a collection of individuals who have like-minded values.
Right.
And so because as a Republican, I align more with the Republican thought process on this, even though I don't think either one of them have it figured out, and none of us are doing it well. I do think that I lean Republican on this because I trust the cabinet, even if I don't completely trust who's sitting at the head of the table.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. The last one on this list, voting rights and election integrity, that was number 10 on ChatGPT's list. I think that really got stirred up last year. I think that's always been an issue. In fact, if you were to go back to the post-Civil War elections after U.S. Grant, Ulysses S. Grant, the very next one, that's actually, I mean, the election was literally finished by a group of people in a room who just made a decision. It didn't even have the American people involved. And if you've never learned that, like go back and watch YouTube videos or teachings on that, or go find it. It's a wild story, which is what ended some of the protection that was going on in the South and led to Jim Crow laws, which is just a wild story. But voting rights and election integrity, I would lean Republican because they're the ones talking about it right now. Democrats, I don't think are, but I do think it matters. I do think we need to be able to show a driver's license or a form of ID to vote. I don't think you should just be able to vote because you show up. I think that's dangerous. I think we need to make sure that you have the right people voting and we're choosing to vote with education.
Yep, 100%. And I think the key, the optimal word is with education. I think part of it is educate yourself.
Yeah.
Learn about these things. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be, at academic level, but you just got to learn something. Know why you're voting, and so that those who are voting vote because it's going to matter, not just because someone told you to do so. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think that there are people that have died for our right to vote, for our right to have an opinion. And I think last election, certainly it blew up. There was concerns about whether there was integrity in the system. I think a lot of advancements have been made in this particular area. I think the Republicans made advancements because they wanted to make sure that they got all their votes, and the Democrats made advancements because they didn't want to be accused of stealing votes. And so I'm not for anybody. I'm like, go Jesus, let the best man or woman win.
That's so good. Listen, I hope this has been beneficial to you. If you stayed this entire time, I hope you're not offended by anything we're saying. We're having an open, honest conversation. What would happen if a black man, a white man, and a woman walks into a voting box? What comes out of it? And I hope you hear our hearts with it. We're not beating anybody up. We're just giving perspectives from a Christian perspective as pastors looking at things as an ambassador of Christ. You may disagree completely with anything we've said, and you have a right to do that. In fact, you have a right to comment. We don't want to create huge arguments, but comment in the comments if you disagree with what we're saying. And we'd love to hear your comment and love to hear other sides of the story. I think that's a valuable part that we've lost inside of America today. But overwhelmingly, I think all of us have been Republicans. So let's just say it. When I get into the voting box, I have not done that yet, but I will be soon. I will be voting for the Republican Party and Donald Trump, not because I think Donald Trump is a hero or a savior or even a person of incredible character, to be honest, but because of, as Pastor Tina said, you're voting for all the cabinet. You're voting for future future Supreme Court nominations, all those kind of things that all play into this. And the Republican Party, for me, is by far the more Christian in the society that we're in right now.
Yeah, I would vote for Republican because a lot of their policies align with closely to Christian values.
Closer, yeah.
Closer.
Yeah, I have already voted, and I voted Republican primarily on almost every single thing that I voted. I specifically voted for Trump, and I'll be the first to say, I don't really like him.
Yeah.
But he aligns and he leads a party that aligns with my values,
Right.
and that's why he got my vote.
All right, so I hope this has been beneficial. Hope you've enjoyed this podcast today. Make sure that you subscribe, hit the buttons right down here below, and subscribe to this podcast. We look forward to seeing you again in the future. Every Thursday, as it is right now, we want to be putting something out that hopefully blesses you, hopefully encourages you, sometimes challenges you, like today may have done, and hopefully we can still be friends if you disagree with us. Love you guys.